Good morning, Pokesports fans, and welcome to a very special episode of Pokesports coming out on a completely different day, but with still your same people. I'm Mike, and I play with one Pokemon on my side of the field.
I'm Kevin. I play with two Pokemon.
And today we're joined by Professor Joey. Professor Joey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. How about y'all?
We're doing fantastic. I'm doing great. Kevin, I was speaking for you.
Nah, you can speak for me.
Oh,
You're
that's
right.
fine. We're good. We're trying out a new format here. We're putting out a second bonus podcast for you guys on a Monday, just so you guys can get some extra Pokesports content with some interesting people. And of course, we thought, why not kind of kick things off by inviting our very first and only so far wink wink guest of March, Professor Joey. Professor Joey, how many Pokemon do you play with on your side of the field? I have that question for you.
Well, I always bring in a team of 6, but if it's doubles, I can only bring in 4. But I'm a big fan of doubles, so we'll say I'll play with 2 Pokemon at the time.
Hey,
Good answer. Good answer. That really
team
helps
number
to
2.
kind of frame the rest of this conversation. Joey, ever since we spoke to you not 4 weeks ago, what have you been up to?
Lots of VGC and lots of navigating new rules, which thankfully have now been clarified, as we will see in Series 3 that comes out this coming weekend.
Now, people who have been listening to our podcast will already know what changes are coming on March 1st. But Joey, because you are the expert around here, why don't you tell us some of the major Cliff Notes, Cole's Notes, whatever you guys call it, of March 1st, Series 3?
Well, the biggest one is new Pokemon. And when I say new, it's older Pokemon that are coming back to be allowed in the format. And one of the biggest ones that we see coming back is Incineroar, which for someone that's for someone that's been doing Pokemon events for about 2 years now, I was a little surprised to see the other Kanto starters and the Alola starters be able to come into the format in the middle of the season. So it's a bit of a refreshing take, and it throws kind of a curveball out to people who were getting used to the meta, working with certain Pokemon, and now you have to change it up because not everything will potentially work going forward in Series 3 and however else the Pokemon company wants to change things up.
You said that you were a Pokemon professor for 2 years, right?
Yeah. So
so you're probably sick of seeing Incineroar by now.
Well, it was a little refreshing not to see Incineroar on the field for a bit. But it's with so many different Pokemon, with Dynamax being a possibility, with the different effects that max moves can bring out. It would be interesting to see how well Incineroar does work against those. I mean, it may not be a very good Pokemon this time. It may be terrible, but it's not. We won't be able to see that until I'd say the Series 3 ladder starts, and then what happens at local VG events and what streamers are doing, and it's really up in the air to see what's going to happen. So it's actually pretty exciting.
That's very true. I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned the effect that streamers have on this game. That's very, very true. More now than kind of ever before. Entire teams are influenced by somebody making a viral video or somebody performing really well on Twitch. Really interesting to see. Now, if we're looking at kind of the Pokemon that have already been used and are continuing to see play, right now in front of me, I have the statistics or the final standings from the Oceania International Championships that just happened this past weekend. Did you get a chance to look at those games,
I
by the way?
did get a chance to watch some of them, not all of them though. It was kind of a busy weekend, unfortunately. But
Well, we had some amazing games going on. Juniors was fantastic, and again, people who listen to this podcast know that we are major fans of the juniors. We think that they're fantastic. Big congrats to Simone Kim for winning Oceania as her first tournament ever. Making some incredible plays. In the Masters division, we saw a lot of the same Pokemon that we've seen in very in other regionals or other tournaments, including Togekiss, Arcanine, Tyranitar, Excadrill. What kind of replacements do you think that these new Pokemon are going to make to the current meta?
I actually think that we might see a Alolan Ninetales now that Alolan Ninetales, because you have Aura Veil, you have its speed to its benefit. So I do think that we'll see some of that. I could always be wrong at this. And then, as I mentioned before, I do think we'll see a lot of Incineroar. And one of the big changes to the meta is that starting with Series 3, Gigantamax Charizard will be able to have solar power.
Yes.
And it'll be interesting to see how well that fits into here. Because it was banned during the first couple months of the new VGC format. And I'd be really interested to see how many people end up incorporating it now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people were already using it with just Blaze as its ability. So now to have solar power in the mix as well, like there's the possibilities are endless.
It's only going to get better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Did you happen to see the amount of Gourgeist usage?
No, but I did see that it came up in second on the second place team. So tell me what y'all's thoughts were about it.
Gladly. I love Gourgeist. I think it's amazing. I think its typing is perfect to deal with some of the I want to say insidious is the right word of amounts of Pokemon that are currently used. I mean, we've got Kinkeldr running Max Knuckle, running Drain Punch, Mach Punch, dealing with Tyranitars. You've got to switch in for that. You can actually run a Pokemon that can soak up a fighting move. I think it's beautiful. Trick or Treat is fantastic also to use on Tyranitar or on Excadrill to make sure that its fighting weakness goes bye-bye. And there just aren't that many other ghost types out there to kind of deal the same kind of damage, except for, say, like Dragapult or Gengar. However, I will say that the introduction of the dark weakness is a little troublesome. And that's kind of why you started seeing, well, one of the reasons why anyway, that you started seeing things like Bisharp or just the move Crunch in general. But I like that it introduced the need for diversity on teams.
Another thing that happened at Oceania Regionals was Tyranitars were actually running special attacks just to counteract Will-O-Wisps.
Yes.
I found that really interesting. They're running Rock Slide with max special attack and then like three other special attacking moves like Dark Pulse, like Earth Power, and a bunch of other stuff. That was super cool.
One of the things that I was kind of surprised about, I mean, I'm looking at some of the teams right now from Masters, and you don't really see much Dracovish in any of the top players right now, except for the first place. Yeah. So I wonder if that one is going to end up getting phased out in the next meta. You also see Excadrill only about on half of the teams. You do see a lot of Arcanine on these teams, and I regret not being able to see like the finals match, but I see the Sylveon on this team. Was the champion able to use that in the battle at all?
It put in some work, Kevin.
Very successfully, yeah.
Yeah, the Pixelate Hyper Voice came in super clutch. In fact, there was one part that I regret not talking about on this week's podcast, but there was a point where it was a Kinkeldr versus second place. I believe it was Gastrodon and Togekiss. Kinkeldr and Sylveon on Marco's side of the field versus Gastrodon and Togekiss on Eduardo's side of the field. Togekiss was Dynamaxed. It wasn't going to, really do anything at that point. Gastrodon was about to use Protect, and everybody knew it. The Conkeldurr was running out of HP, but I believe had Tailwind on its side, so it was going to outspeed both of those Pokemon. Mm-hmm. What it did instead of attacking into the Togekiss to do very little damage, or instead of attacking into the Gastrodon, who was definitely going to protect, the Conkeldurr Drain Punched the Sylveon, healed up, and was able to take an extra move from the other side, so that Conkeldurr actually managed to stay alive because of the fact that it drain punched its own partner.
That's fascinating. That's amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the whole Twitch chat at the time was just going nuts. That was like
Twitch chat went nuts. I went nuts. The commentators went nuts. It was fantastic.
That's crazy. I need to go back and review that. And I'm sorry that I get a chance to watch it beforehand, before coming on today. But that honestly is a really, really, really cool move. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to talk about it. Yeah.
When players get the opportunity to just like make a prediction like that, people just go crazy. Because what was interesting about that play is that he almost knocked out a Sylveon while he did it. So the commentator was kind of like, was it really worth it? But the fact that, Conkeldurr was able to survive the burn, was able to survive the incoming attack, that just, totally worth it, because later on that Conkeldurr won him the game.
Well, it worked. Marco won.
Yeah, dude. It was so hype.
You know what? I think the thing that we're most interested in talking with you about today would actually be the mid-season showdown. Mm-hmm. I believe you had a mid-season showdown in your area last week.
I did. And it was the biggest video game tournament that I have ever done, that I've organized.
Really?
Yeah. And it is very, very, like I talked about before, where you're seeing more players and more interest. When I do a TCG tournament, for those unfamiliar with TCG, the equivalent of a mid-season showdown on the TCG side is a League Cup. My League Cups usually average about 33, 34, 36. I think the most I've ever had was 39. My mid-season showdown last week had 34 people.
Awesome.
Wow.
And that is probably more than double than I've ever had for a mid-season before, which I am excited about.
So tell me a little bit about what that looked like inside the venue. Was it a large venue? Was it a small venue, mid-size? What was that like?
I mean, it's your average game shop. And by game shop, I mean, like, it's mostly a trading card shop. It's mostly a comic book shop. And so the store has its own gaming annex, and it's all just gaming tables. And so we filled up about at least half, maybe 2/3 of the room.
Beautiful.
And that day we ended up going 5 rounds with just Swiss, and then we had a top 8. And looking at the teams that we had within the top 8, like the winner was a gentleman from Houston. His name is Mark. His team had Durant, it had Togekiss, it had Hitmontop, it had Arcanine, it had Vanillux, and it had Milotic, which kind of what we're seeing. Yeah, Hitmontop. And
cool.
Yeah, and it's been about a week since the event, so I can talk about this. The Hitmontop was it had Intimidate, Assault Vest, Sucker Punch, Fake Out, Close Combat, and Bullet Punch. And so I think that was maybe there were a couple more, I think, on there. I didn't get to see this battle or the final like too intently. Because I was setting up for the premiere challenge that was going to be happening right afterwards. So I didn't get to see like if you got to how much that he got to use it, but there were a couple of other players that did have Hitmontop as well.
Interesting. Now, do you think that that's these locals are getting together a lot and they're kind of influencing each other kind of thing, or is this something that we're seeing all over?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I'm encouraging it between players. because that's why I have a weekly VG meetup every Sunday for folks just to come out and team test. I mean, it's what we had this weekend, for instance, is we had about 8 or 9 people show up for our VG just regular meetup, and we had a few people testing out Series 3 rules, and I would encourage people to find local Pokemon leagues within their community. All you have to do is go to the Pokemon event locator, and you can see where leagues are meeting. It'll say if a league does both TCG and VGC. It might be a little harder to find some leagues that just meet regularly for VGC because TCG is kind of dominant among Pokemon organized play. But when you go out and you find these players within your own community, you find friends that you can team build with and better each other with. So I highly encourage anybody to go and find a local Pokemon league in their community. And actually, I've had 3 people show up over the past month that specifically, when I asked, how did you hear about our league? They had said they heard Wolf Glick talk about it in one of his streams to say, go find a local Pokemon league. And so they did. They went out and found one. So if any of the major streamers listen to this or Twitch streamers listen to this, encourage players too to come out and find local Pokemon leagues, because the more local people we get within our communities, the more this scene grows. And that is what I'm most excited about this.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think one of the more slept on ideas is the fact that now that all of these games and all of these ways to play have gone the online route, that there's no point in going out anymore. That is so far from the truth. I think there is so much value in actually going and in real time speaking with somebody who's playing a team that you just that goes right over your head. You lose to a team or you play against a team that you have no idea how it's doing what it does. You get to talk to them there. You get to find out their point of view, and you get to learn things that you otherwise wouldn't have learned. And so I think, like, personally, my greatest time that I spent learning was when I was hosting, like kind of an underground league event, just out of a game shop. Like, we had a bunch of people who were like, you know what, I really like playing Pokemon. So I was like, hey, let's all meet up at this game shop, every Saturday, and maybe we'll host a tournament or two and just kind of do our thing. And I learned the most that I ever will have learned about Pokemon just from doing that, both from the player standpoint and from the organizer standpoint.
And along with learning, it's just some of the most fun that I ever remembered having playing Pokemon. Like, yeah, you can sit at home playing on ranked until you see 300 Togekiss, but it's a lot more fun to just go out, have that sense of community, and just find new friends. I mean, even if you find yourself being a little bit of like social anxiety, it's not bad. Everyone there has the exact same interest as you. Everyone there loves Pokemon. So just go up to someone, say, hi, my name is such and such. My favorite Pokemon is blank. And you'll probably make a friend. It's really fun.
Oh yeah, especially with our league, people have made their own circles of friends within our league.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's always meant to be a very inviting experience, to bring in new players, to bring in new friends. And in fact, when we all started meeting, it was just a few of us coming together, and then that grew, and more people showed up, and then it just became like this bigger circle of friends. That we have several group chats going. Some of them are just, hey, let's go get pizza, or some are just like, hey, let's test a team right now. So it's fun, and you can build friendships upon this.
So what we're gonna do right now, let's take a little break. Let's go and recharge, and then when we come back, let's get into exactly what mid-season showdowns are. Maybe Joey, you can talk a little bit more about kind of your role and what you do after we come back from the break.
Sounds good.
And we're back with our conversation with Professor Joey. Joey, let's get a little bit more into play Pokemon in general. We talked about the fact that you just recently had a mid-season showdown as well as a premier challenge. How about we get into what exactly those mean for people? Why are people coming out to mid-season showdowns or premier challenges in the first place? Why do people come out to Dallas regionals? What What do they get?
All right, I am so glad you asked that because that's one of the biggest questions that I get from new VGC players. Is like, what is this tournament? Why are people talking about points? The way the VGC circuit works is that there are two types of events that local professors can organize for their communities. And let me preface this by saying is that I am a local Pokemon professor for San Antonio. I am not an employee of the Pokemon Company. I just sanction events locally and run events locally here that people can use to get world championship points. I also run a league here. And so that's my role with Pokemon Organized Play, not an employee. I'm a volunteer that helps put all these events together. So looking at the VGC circuit, the lowest, the most entry level event rather that you can attend is called a Premier Challenge. And a Premier Challenge is an event where you can get up to 30 championship points for first place. So what are championship points? Well, championship points are used to gain entry into the Pokemon World Championships. So when you get first place in a Premier Challenge, you get 30 points. And to get an invite to the World Championships, you have to get, for Masters right now, it's 400 points. So you have to participate and win enough events to get enough points to go. Then you also have a step up from Premier Challenges is the Mid-Season Showdown. And the Mid-Season Showdown awards 50 points to first place. And people in second and third and fourth place will also get points. So to hold a tournament locally, we have to have a minimum of 4 players. And so if those 4 players all play, they'll all end up technically in the top 4. So first place gets 50 points, second place gets 40 points, third and fourth place will get 32 points each. And the point structure is a little different for the Premier Challenges. Now it actually changes if, let's say, there are more players in a tournament. So if I have at least 24 players in a tournament, top 8 is then going to get points. So places 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th will get 25 points each. And if it gets higher than that, even more, if I get 48 players in a tournament, then 9th through 16th place will get points and they'll get 20. Now, some cities will actually get up to more like almost 100 people. I think we saw that in New York not too long ago, especially the first week in the new format. I think they just got under about 100 people, but that just depends on the age division because there's different age divisions too. But in that case, then top 32 will get points. Now, Mid-Season Showdown is the highest local tournament that a local organizer can do. Above that is a regionals, and regionals are fun. I'm going to assume you guys have both been to regionals, right?
I have. I think Mike's going to his first next month.
Yeah, I'm going to my first VGC regionals. I've been to a TCG.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Okay, so regional events are awesome. It is basically a full weekend of just like competitive Pokemon action. And whether you like TCG or VGC, it's a lot of fun. So, I talked about, last time I was on, we talked about Dallas. Dallas had, in January, had 607 players registered.
Oof.
Wow.
Which is just an enormous amount of people. The number of people actually seated, I think, was in the range of like 580 because some people that register can't always make it. I forget what the point structure is, but if you look at, for instance, Oceania, well, actually, before I jump to Oceania, let me talk a little more about regionals. For instance, in Dallas, we had 600 players. So the kicker being the number of participants that's needed for certain players to get points, the kicker was 400 players. So because we had at least 400 people in that tournament, that means the first 128 players were able to get points. And first being, first through 128th place. So the champion got 200 points, and all the way down to 128th place got 40 points, and so it kind of changed. Second place got 160. Third through fourth place got 130.
Yep.
That is what a lot of players strive to get, especially when you get so close to the actual world championship date. You can accumulate points up until about mid-June or so. That's when the Pokemon Company kind of cuts it off, so that way they can start tallying up points. So towards the summer, you'll get all these people that are trying to attend as many events as they can to try to get their points in order to get that coveted invite. Now, regionals are actually put together by local, but not local, but by regional organizers. They're folks that are selected to run events by the Pokemon Company. The next one that's coming up this coming weekend, actually on February 28th, 9th, and March 1st, is the Collinsville Regionals, and that's right outside of St. Louis. Then there's a few more that are coming up. I know you guys, I think you both said you're heading to the Canada Regionals,
Correct.
right? In
Ontario,
Toronto?
yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then above regionals is the International Championships. Now, international makes it seem like it's the top level, but it's not yet. It's the top level for anybody being able to enter. So there are 4 international championships every year. One in Latin America, one in Oceania, which is mostly Australia, one in Europe, and then one in North America. And we just wrapped up Oceania. The next one coming up is Europe, and that's April 17th and 19th, and that's going to be happening in Berlin. And the North American International Championships, once again, is going to be happening in Columbus, Ohio this summer, June 26th and June 28th. Now, the International Championships, they give a lot of points.
Yeah.
A lot.
Oh, yeah.
So for first place at the International Championships, you get 500 points. That is more than enough to get your invite.
Get a ticket to Worlds right there. That's what you play for.
Almost. Pretty much. Then second place gets 400. Third and fourth will get 320 points. And, it goes on and on and on and on. So a lot of people will really try to attend these events. These events are the ones you will get the hardcore competitors at, the people that really want to get that Worlds invite. I will admit, I went to the International Championships a couple of years ago in Columbus. I believe that was, I can't remember if that was, actually, I think that was 2018 that I had gone as a player. And my record was terrible. I went like 2-7. I was really, really bad, but it was fun. So I can't remember what I placed at, because there were 320 something players there, if I'm not mistaken. So, and then you get people from all over the world there. That's why they're called the International Championships. They used to be called Nationals, but they changed it. Just to make it more inviting, because this one is designed for people from Mexico, Canada, and the United States to be able to attend. But really, anybody that wants to make the trip to Columbus would be able to go.
Very, very interesting to see how the points are kind of distributed. This past tournament had, I believe it was 283 seated, which means that up until 64th place, people are getting points. So like close to, I want to say a quarter of people are walking away with like a hefty amount of points. So if you're coming in and you know your stuff well enough to put yourself in kind of the top percentile there, you you're sitting pretty for Worlds.
You don't even have to get first to get to Worlds. Second place gets like auto Worlds too. Essentially, they get 400 points immediately. Yeah, even if you just cut for internationals, you only need a couple more after that. You're pretty close to the goal.
For sure.
So that's really good. Yeah.
Now I am curious. When you get over the amount of points for Worlds, like if you go to an international championships, like if you are Simone Kim, who just won for juniors, now obviously the juniors is pointed differently. Your barrier to entry for Worlds is a lot lower. So she and Justin, the first and second place, both just got enough points to go to Worlds. Do you get anything for getting more points above that?
I believe that people who have a high number of points can actually get some of their trip paid for being
Yes.
able to go. So the higher number of points you get, and I can't remember what the threshold is, but there are players who can get some of their trip paid for in order to attend. So that's why some people will go far and above and beyond the minimum 400 points that are needed.
And it's always good practice too. Just like putting yourself in that tournament setting is incredible practice, especially when you get a lot of these top players. They don't get like any tournament nerves anymore because they've just been to so many. That's why they always seem so relaxed whenever they're on stream. They're like, okay, I know what I have to do. I have to come in, I have to play some Pokemon and hope that RNG is in my favor.
And I am seeing on the Pokemon.com site the ability to win yourself a stipend to go to these tournaments, ranging from like $1,000 to $5,000 if you're under age 18, meaning you're traveling with a parent.
Oh geez.
Yeah. So that is pretty interesting. I love this talk. This is the Play Pokemon episode that I've wanted to have for a long time, because I'm just so interested in how the points work. But I feel like I've always kind of needed someone to walk me through it, because the information's all there. It's just sometimes you need another person who's kind of been in the weeds to kind of be like, that's what this means. That's what this means. Like, I just learned about what a kicker meant. And now everything makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. While I was just a player before becoming just a professor, I had to get a few people to explain to me, how some of this stuff works. So after you've been doing it for a while, you get the hang of it.
Right.
And to new players who might be listening to this, I know it might sound like, oh, it's a little daunting. It's a lot of fun when you get into it. When you get really into it, it is a blast. Like, I love talking about this stuff, and I love helping get new players excited and interested into it. Even if you can't travel to some of them, some of the regionals that are happening, you can always attend the local events that are happening within your own community. If you get the chance to attend a regionals, go. Just go. If you can make it, even if you just want to go to spectate. I know registration for each of these regionals can vary. Like some regionals charge $45 to get in, or rather not to get in, but to register, to compete.
Yes.
And you do get some swag. You do actually get things back. Like I know in Dallas this year, I was helping stuff some of the swag bags, and some of it was TCG oriented, some of it was VG oriented. Like I know VG players got a hat, and I think there was some other items in there that we were putting in. There was also a TCG mat. There were also deck boxes.
Yeah.
So things that the organizer for the big event will provide to players to either use or to collect. Like one of my favorite things, like, is always getting the hat, because those regionals hats you can't buy them anywhere. You can only get them when you attend those events. So I have several that I consider collector's items.
Absolutely.
And you can see where the regionals are by if you just go to Google and type in Pokemon regionals, you can see a full list of where they're all happening. We talked about a couple already. Salt Lake City is happening, for instance, the first weekend in April. There's one that's going to be in Milwaukee. There's going to be one in Albany.
Which of the ones coming up do you think is going to see the most people? Which ones are you particularly looking out for?
It depends. So Dallas, because it was the first one, had an incredibly high VGC turnout. And it's I know that with Collinsville, for instance, the one that's coming up, they have a total cap of 1,500 combined for both VG and TCG. So they are trying to get people to register, because I think, and this might change by the time this airs, But they were around 900 or so, I think, at the start of this weekend, and a lot of people are like last minute registrants. It's just human nature that you'll see one of the biggest rushes of people registering in the final few days. So I would imagine that they're going to hit their cap, but what those numbers are at, we'll see, because each regional is different. We might see as many that we saw in Dallas at another regional. I haven't seen what the live roster is yet for Collinsville. Collinsville uses Arcanine Labs, which is a company that does the pairings and also registration for TCG and VG at regionals. So that's the organization that will also pair each of the matches as they're happening. So they do the logistics and stuff of actually like putting the competition part together, if that makes any sense.
Interesting.
And so when you actually go to register for regionals, in most cases, they will take you to the Arcanine Labs page. There are other companies out there that provide this same service too. It just depends on which regionals that you're going to go to. So I think even with Oceania, if you go to Arcanine Labs, you can still see how many players were there. At I think Oceania was probably in like the 300s for VG. So I don't know. We'll see. I think the live roster for Collins will probably be posted in the next couple of days. So we'll see how many people are signed up, probably before the end of the week.
And they're definitely anticipating a lot of people going. If the cap is 1,500, then say half of that is VG, half of that is TCG. That's like 750.
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably be, judging by historical, more TCG than VG, but definitely now with the surge of VG players, it's going to be a lot closer than it kind of has been. I feel like a lot of people are still, even now, like getting into Sword and Shield. Like it's still growing, the VG player base, and it's largely in part of all of these in-person events and regionals, and Dallas getting the notoriety that it did, and Oceania getting the notoriety that it did. And I've that's just going to keep on growing as the year goes. Once people learn that, hey, you really only need to win one of these internationals to get your Worlds invite, people are going to come in, whenever.
Right. And I just went to go look at Collinsville is put on by a company called Yeti Gaming.
Yes.
And as of early Sunday, there were 942 total players registered. So that's TCG and VGC, all age divisions. And their cap right now is set at 1,500. So yeah. we'll see how much, whether, because I can't see right now which one is TCG and which one is VG, or how many are in each. I'd venture to say that the majority was probably leaning more towards TCG, but that is just a guess. That's just the way things have been in the past. But who knows? We might actually have more VG than TCG. Well, we won't know for a few days. Like if you took the total numbers for Dallas, I think there were about maybe, and I'm hoping getting these numbers right, just under 1,000 people for TCG, and the 600 or so for VG. So Dallas had the range of like probably maybe a little north of 1,500 people there, and all in that the hotel that it was hosted at. And this one is happening, Collinsville, I think, is happening, if I'm not mistaken, at a place called the Gateway Center, which
like a convention center.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more, because they have a picture of the venue, or the map of the venue, where you can see everything is actually the way that actually everything is set up.
And I do know, because I am a local to the Toronto area, the venue that they're hosting the Mississauga regionals is also very, very big. It's a massive convention center kind of thing as well. The International Center, widely used for some of our larger conventions, minus, save the ones that happen actually in Toronto. But hey, I mean, if this one is as large as kind of some of the other ones, then we might be seeing some migration into like mainstay Toronto, which would be really cool to see.
One of the things I'd like to add about regionals is, though, although they have the main event for TC and VGC, the they also have side events there, and
Ah, yes.
a side event are things where you can earn, you can compete like in small tournaments. Um, Side events also include premier challenges and mid-season showdowns. So if like at Dallas, for instance, the day after we had the main event, anybody that was not in Top Cut could have participated the following day, Sunday, in the mid-season showdown. And you'll see that at most regionals. They'll have a premier challenge and a mid-season showdown in most cases that you can participate and also try to gain more points outside of the main event. And then there are also like smaller like maybe 4 or 8 person mini tournaments that and they do this at internets and at worlds a lot too, where let's say that you have a roster of 8 people, and you're going to go maybe 4 rounds or something, best of 1. Well, and I know that at Dallas and at the world championships and also at the internationals, what they will do is that for every win you get, you'll get a prize ticket, and you can take that prize ticket to the prize wall where you can get like official Pokemon merchandise and trade in your tickets there. So
Cool.
it's more than just going out to compete. I mean, like I mentioned, it is like a full Pokemon weekend where you can walk out with some pretty nice swag. And I think at Dallas, side event, each side event will usually cost like at a ticket or two to enter, usually just one ticket, and the tickets are like $5. So, but every time you win, you'll win a prize ticket that you can go trade in.
So there's no shortage of things to do at these major tournaments, and for good reason, right? Like there are people
Mhm.
who are flying out from all around the world to go to these things. Like it's a really smart idea to kind of make it worth their while through things outside of just the main reason that they're there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you can go to a city that you've never been to. Like I will be heading to the Salt Lake City regionals, and so I've never been to Salt Lake City. That's gonna be pretty cool. I also might be going to Milwaukee. I've never been to Wisconsin, so hey, let's go check it out. And I know that Atlantic City will usually have a regionals, or Philadelphia, because the regional locations will change each year. I know that Portland will usually have one, so I am planning to apply to staff Portland next year. If that one is still regionals, and I'm pretty sure it will be.
Cool.
Then there's San Diego, there's Santa Clara, places that I'd like to go visit and check out, and it helps people like get out of their usual bubble.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's bringing Kevin and I together.
Mhm.
He's out of New York, and I'm over here. He's coming over here to play with me. So I think with that, we'll call that a day. Joey, I want to thank you so much for coming on and joining us. Joey, where can people find you?
So you can find me on Twitter. I tweet out at ProfessorJoeyVG.
Kevin, where can people find you?
Twitter and Instagram, X-Rays Ovation.
And then, of course, you can find me at StillJustMike on Instagram and Twitter. You can find the podcast on Spotify. You can rate, review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts. So you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Pokesports, where you can subscribe to us there because we put out stuff every single day. You can find us on Twitter at Pokesports Pod, Instagram, Pokesports Podcast, or Patreon at Pokesports Podcast. Again, Joey, thank you so much. This has been super enlightening. I didn't expect it to go in the play Pokemon route, but I'm super glad it did. Because like I said, I'm just I've been wanting to understand kind of the nuances of play Pokemon and all of the different kinds of tournaments that you can have. And of course, if anybody out there is listening who wants to know more, simply tweet at Joey to kind of have some of your questions answered. Until then, guys, thank you so much for listening. We will see you in the next episode. Have yourself a great week until then.